Natalie Bennett, former leader of the Green Party. Baroness Bennett joins us now. Natalie, welcome back to the show. Thanks for giving us your time.
Lovely to be back with you, Alexis.
What do you make of what Keir Starmer said today in Munich? This idea that, you know, the far left and the far right are not to be trusted, soft on Russia, ambiguous on NATO. What do you mean? What do you make of what he said?
Well, I think it's a really grave pity that our caretaker Prime Minister has displayed to the world his own internal weaknesses, using this major, serious international forum to score internal political points, obviously pointing towards the Gorton and Denton by-election, where the bookmakers currently have the Green Party as favourite and Labour is trailing a very distant third. This is not the way we should be expecting our Prime Minister to be behaving in this major international conference.
Okay, well, that is a point, and a point that was echoed, I have to say, by Gawain Towler, speaking on behalf of Reform. But does he have a point, though, Keir Starmer? Zach Polanski has previously said that he is in favour of leaving NATO.
Absolutely not. And in fact, what we're hearing today from the Prime Minister is things that we've long been calling for. He is actually there in Munich calling for closer ties to the European, explicitly acknowledging in ways that are still far weaker than what we've heard from Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, than what we've heard from President Macron of France, that we cannot rely on the US for our security, that as the Greenlanders are all too aware, that the US, under President Trump, presents some pretty serious threats.
Okay.
And actually, the Green Party are the people who first pointed this out, who were first saying this on the British political stage. So, we are the people who are being absolutely realist about the current political situation. This is not the America of Trump. The America of Trump is not the America of Biden or Obama. And I'm afraid this government has been really slow to realise that.
Okay, so just to be clear, what is the Green stance on NATO? Would the Greens be in favour of leaving NATO or staying in NATO?
Well, what we say is that NATO no longer exists in the form that has existed in the past. What we have to do look to our future.
Sorry to interrupt you, Natalie. I hate doing that, but I mean, how is it not the same as it existed in the past? I mean, what we're seeing from Europe is saying that, look, Europe should be capable of, I think Ursula von der Leyen used the phrase, standing on its own two feet, being able to depend itself and not being over-reliant on American help. But other than that sentiment, how has NATO essentially changed to the point where I'm still not clear whether the Greens are in favour of leaving or staying in NATO?
Well, I think if you look at what the Danish Prime Minister was saying in Munich this afternoon with regard to Greenland, and I'm quoting exactly here, perhaps in translation, I'm not sure, but the desire for the US president is exactly the same. Speaking about Greenland, we are in a situation where there is very serious concerns that the US, a member of NATO, might take a piece of a NATO territory from another NATO member by force. We have been saying this is not something we can rely on anymore. This is something that is simply unrealistic and we need to look to our own security. And I think, it's really important to look at what's been happening. And we've got to really applaud the bravery of Yulia Navalny this afternoon, talking about the poisoning of her husband, Alexei, which, of course, is reminding us of the Salisbury poisonings here in the UK. We do have very serious security concerns. I was on an event last month with the European movement, looking at the UK and Europe the year ahead, and I was actually the only person. There were Labour and Tory MPs on it as well. I was the person who raised the security issues. We are the people who've been being very realistic about our security for a long time, in a way that other parties still are catching up or have not yet caught up with. And we acknowledge very much that there is Russian threats. We've just seen in Germany just last week, people charged over an alleged plot to put explosive parcels onto planes, and one of those was found in Birmingham.
Okay, but I'm still not quite clear, though, whether the Green Party policy is that if they were in power, they would push for the UK to leave NATO.
Well, we're in a situation now where NATO simply doesn't exist in the forms that it has previously. That's where we are now.
You say that, but people would argue and say exactly the opposite. NATO has been strengthened right now, perhaps because of Donald Trump's policies, because he has said, look, you're not paying your way. You're over-reliant on American help. We've been doing the heavy lifting. It's time that the rest of you are putting the money that you should, or you've said you'd put in, but actually have failed to do so. So in a sense, NATO has been strengthened by President Trump's presidency rather than weakened. So NATO is very much there. What are the Greens' attitude towards NATO? Would they take the country out or not?
Well, I think, you were talking about the reliance on the US, and one of the things that we as Greens have been very much focusing on is the contracts between Palantir and UK defence and indeed police surveillance and our NHS contracts. Now, this is a giant company very closely linked to President Trump and particularly to J.D. Vance. Its founder actually bankrolled J.D. Vance's advance in American politics. And this, Palantir is deeply embedded into the British state in ways that are deeply dangerous. And Zach Polanski has been very much leading in focusing on the NHS contract, that there's a lot of concern, but there's also real concerns. If we're going to talk about sovereignty, if we're going to talk about control in Britain, our own control over our own state, insurance of our own security, we have to be deeply concerned about US companies like Palantir's penetration deep within our structures.
Do you worry, Natalie? Because I have asked you, and apologise for having done so, asked you about the same question about 3 times, and we have, you've made a lot of points, but essentially I'm still going to leave this interview none the wiser of whether or not Zach Polanski and the Green Party are in favour of leaving NATO. And do you worry that actually being unclear about it, you may say, look, NATO's changed, it's no longer what it used to be, and some people might agree or disagree, but unless you're able to give a clear answer, then you're not going to be taken seriously as a political force, particularly on something as important as national security.
Well, if I go back in my own personal history, it feels a long time ago now. I was editor of The Guardian Weekly, the international edition of The Guardian. And I've been watching, international politics for a long time. And I think it's increasingly clear to the British public that the Greens are the people who've seen that the world is changing, that Britain has not been lined up, with an accurate reflection of the way the world is, certainly over the past few years. And I think the British public are increasingly seeing that we are the people who have a realistic grasp of our current security situation. And, what we're saying very much lines up with people like Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, what President Macron is saying. And it's the British government that really is still trying to live in the past in a way that's deeply dangerous.
Okay. Natalie, thank you for giving me your time. Unfortunately...
Phenomena. 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 Phenomena.